Well, about to join us now on higher ground, a former Rabbitoh. He played a little bit of time at Canterbury Bulldogs as well. I'm talking about Steve Mavin, who played with the Bunnies in the late 80s, was it? Early 90s as well. And these days, apart from other things, obviously, he's pretty busy with Rabbitohs Radio. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Mate, love, a pleasure. We talk all things rugby league. Sometimes we don't talk much sense, but you'll be fine in that department, I'm sure.
Yep. We
try and have a bit of fun as well. Listen, we have a program on Monday nights on Higher Ground, and we go back in time and we call it Goodfellas. We track down players of the past. We might even do that with you at some stage. But yep. What have you been up to these days away from footy?
Well, I've been married to my lovely wife Sam for, I think it's 27 years now. I've got two kids, 25 and 23, Jasmine and Demi. And I also have been working at the Wharfs at Port Botany for 14 years now. And that's shift work, but it's a pretty good job. There's a lot of old football players there, like Les Davidson.
I was going to say, do you ever run into Cement? I think he's out there.
I do, Cement. And yeah, I just saw that. You actually played a game with Cement in 1992 against Brownie. So doesn't that all tie in?
Yeah, well, I only played a handful of first grade games, but yeah, it was Cement. I think I made my debut with Cement, and actually, that game, I reckon Sean Garlick was probably playing as well.
He was, according to the Rugby League Project. It was quite an interesting game. What about the lineup? Terry Hill, and Andrew Farrer, and the great Bob Linder. So yeah, it was
Linder. I know. Oh mate, I was in awe of those guys, to be honest with you, because I was only a young kid doing my best, and I was, to be honest with you, Steve, if I played one first grade game, you know what, that was probably my goal in life, and I think I played about 5 or whatever. But lining up with those guys, it was just amazing. And I think Spud Carroll was the opposite prop too.
He was indeed, yeah. Jimmy Sedaris, a lot of my mates in that team, So and actually, Corey Murray was the 5'8" that day.
Yeah,
Cameron's dad.
We must be round about the same sort of age, hey.
Yep.
So you're doing well. Then you're doing well, but obviously you've still got a big foothold in rugby league because of the stuff you do with Rabbitohs Radio. So just tell our listeners, not that we want you taking any of our listeners, but tell our listeners what you guys are doing and how that podcast is going.
Well, there's plenty of South fans out there listening now, and we just started the podcast in 2019. Me, Darren Brown, former Rabbitoh and Bulldog, and our mate Grant Chappell, and we just started with no idea, recorded the show on my iPhone, and we've progressed now to we've got our own studio, some sponsors, and we make some good quality sound, and so we've actually been picked up by the Rabbitohs now. We're part of the Rabbitohs Podcast Network. And so Rabbitohs Radio is on there. There's another show called The Top 4, hosted by Jeremy Monaghan, Mark Ellison, and Shannon Donato. And, so it's really good to have made that progression. It's a great hobby for us, and it's sort of developed more than that now. We've got our NRL accreditation, so we can go in the media areas. We do a lot of the press conferences, and, it's been a great journey to learn all the ins and outs of podcasting, because podcasting has become more popular now. Things like Netflix Netflix on demand, and podcasting's on demand. You can play it in the car, press pause, and come back when you like.
Yeah.
But one of the joys of the show for us is doing the interviews and learning how to interview people. We've had Latrell Mitchell on, Cameron Murray, we've had Bob McCarthy, Ron Cute. Yeah, it's a lot of fun doing the show, and we've been lucky enough to been embraced by the Rabbitohs, and we've got a lot of access to the team and to the staff there, and it's good. We report on the game that's been played, and we preview the game coming up, and we feature a former Rabbitoh each week. So we believe it's quite a good show, and we've built some loyal listeners across all our socials, and we've converted some people into podcast listeners, which is really satisfying.
Yeah, no, mate, it's one of the ways of the future. It's definitely a big part of our business here at SEN. The podcasts are going great guns as well. So it's great you're enjoying it too, and you've got to have a lot of fun along the way. How's Brownie? How's he going these days?
Brownie's going good. Well, we had similar careers. We both, started at South around the same time and went to the Bulldogs, and we both played in England together. And he works at the Wolves as well, so we've got a few former Rabbitohs down there, like Darryl.
I tell you what, there mustn't be much work getting done down there at the Wolves. You, Brownie, Cement Gillespie, who else?
Les Davidson. Blokes like Darryl Neville. We've also got like Corey Hughes and big Keefe Galloway's out there now. So there's a lot of good banter, and a lot of it's centred around the banter with the Roosters. There's a lot of Rooster supporters out there, and that's sort of how the show was born. We were always talking footy and bagging each other, and it sort of developed into that because, Chaps, our co-host, he's really passionate about not liking the Chooks, and that's quite funny when he talks at the press conferences and that, and you can just see that. But so it is a good lot of fun. And
you guys could put together a good old boys team, couldn't you, from the war? So I tell you what, you might be able to play New South Wales Cup or something.
Yeah, well, we did actually do that. We selected a Wharfies 17, and we filled out our whole teams. It was quite funny. We talked about that on the show. Yeah,
good. Hey, listen, all right, let's talk a bit about the Bunnies then. And last night, well, not the start they wanted. Melbourne really, really good, weren't they? As we probably expected. But you guys slow out of the blocks, but a lot to like about South Sydney. I don't think they'll be walking away, Wayne Bennett, too disappointed. There was enough there to suggest that you guys are going to be right up there.
There was. We had a terrible start. I think the Storm had 2 offloads in the first set of 6, and then they scored after 2 minutes, and it was a real barrage. And I think Vossi mentioned it, how it's the post-Cameron Smith era, the post-Big 3 era, but they've got this other Big 3, incredibly, that have come through with Pappenhausen and Munster, and they didn't even have Harry Grant there last night, but when he comes back in, they're going to be extremely hard to beat. But yeah, I was really proud of the way the side hung in there, and then they came back. Latrell Mitchell played some brilliant football, scored a great try and setting one up. And then Jai Arrow, his performance was outstanding off the bench in 45 minutes. I think he ran for about 176 metres and 30 tackles. And then Benji coming on adds a whole new dynamic, and it's quite an interesting talking point, and we'll be talking about that on the show that we do this week, that, is that going to continue, how he came on in the middle and he was sort of running with 3 halves? It's a little bit different, but he was good, Benji. He had a hand in a couple of tries, quick service there when he got the ball out wide. So, yeah, South fans, lift your heads up. We've got some great football ahead of us, and we're going to win a lot of footy games, starting with the Battle of Brookie next week. We've got to take on the Manly Silvertails.
Yeah, I mean, they were good. Latrell was really good. But that left edge of the Bunnies looks so sharp. And I reckon, he topped the try-scoring chart last year, didn't he, Alex Johnston? But I reckon he's going to be up there again. The service that he's going to get from the inside it just looks so impressive.
Oh, well, AJ's a great player, and like we talked about it on the show again, he won the try-scoring last year and he missed the first 2 games. But now he's off to a double this year, so if you're on him for leading try-scorer, you'd have to be fairly confident with the start you got. But yes, you're right. Cody Walker, he played sensational football in the Charity Shield, and we saw bits of that last night, but it was a little bit hard when we were under the pump and struggling to go forward. But, our back line is a gun back line, and I think we struggled last night. We only had, I think, 42% of possession. We didn't complete like we should have. We only completed 63%, and the Storm completed 78%. And you can't beat them when you're doing that. We had 16 or 17 errors, and a couple of those were silly passes. So the boys will admit it wasn't their best performance, but I think they can turn that around and learn from that game.
Oh, absolutely. Very hard to go to Melbourne and win, as the Bunnies know. They've never done it. I'm talking to Steve Mavin, former, what are we calling you, winger, centre from the Bunnies? What would you play mostly?
I played sort of half centre and half back. I grew up a front rower, actually. I was a forward when I first got the grade, but when I got to South...
You stopped growing.
Yeah, that's right. They were all big when I got there, but they had a great pack. When I came in, our pack was Mario Fennick, Les Davidson, David Boyle, Ian Roberts, Michael Andrews, so... I ended up in the centres because we had such a strong pack. So, yeah. So forward/back.
You talked about Benji Marshall there and how he's going to be used by Wayne Bennett this year. It could be, given the impact he made immediately last night, it could be a master stroke. He could be the signing of the year.
Well, that's right. And there was a bit of conjecture about people saying, why are you carrying Benji on the bench? Why haven't you got your 4 forwards? And there is an argument for that, but... it was there for all to see last night. He came on and he added that bit of spark, and we spoke to him at Redfern Oval at a press conference a couple of weeks ago, and what he brings to the team is also what he brings off the field. Like, he's already been working with some of our young halves, and he's one of the greats of the game. 300 plus first grade, and it'd be nice to have 2005 Benji Marshall at the club, but we've got the 2021 model, and what he did last night, he's still got it. And what I think with South too is, because we've got such a strong culture at the club, and the 20-year progression from being kicked out of the comp to where we are now as a powerhouse has really been an awesome thing to watch, especially for me being a lifelong South fan and having the disappointments of semi-finals and all that. But, so Benji coming into a team now, like for some other players, they come into this strong lineup and all of a sudden they're revitalised. It's a bit like what the Storm have been doing for years with some players that have come from other clubs and gone there and all of a sudden they're flying. So let's hope that happens with the great Benji Marshall. And yeah, well, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out when if he comes in the middle. And I think he came on for Jaden Sewer.
Could play. He could play 13, he could play 6, he could play 7, he could play 9. I mean, you know what? And if you do get an injury to Adam Reynolds or Cody Walker, I think no problem whatsoever starting with Benji. I think it's a really good move to have brought him to the club. Just talking to Adam Reynolds quickly, Steve, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think they should lock him up long term and give him what he wants?
Yeah, I love Reno. He's been on the podcast. He's been a big friend of the show. He's the captain of the club. And his kicking game's phenomenal. He's a leader, and his form last year was brilliant. We've gone to the top 4, the preliminary final the last 3 years. But yeah, there is two sides of the argument, and I'm not going to say what I think they should do because I think we're in good hands, and they'll make the right decision for the club and hopefully for Reno too.
Yeah. Okay, well let's hope they do. Finally, mate, so talking to Steve Mavin here, former Bunnies centre or winger. Tom Burgess, he's okay, I think. Yes.
He is, Thomas. That's great news. We had Brecky with him down in Mudgee the day of the Charity Shield, and he's a great guy. He came on the podcast for a chat as well. He's a young dad and family man, and it's really good to see him that he hasn't got any long-lasting injuries because he's been really good for us. Like I think Brownie on the show said that he noticed that every try that we scored against the Dragons was because Thomas was running the ball, getting us on the front foot, and then we got that extra advantage. A bit like what young Keon Kalamatangi does for us too. So he's another gun player that I'd like to see, rise to a bit more prominence. But yeah, it's good news that Tommy's all right, and because we need to get him back now. There would have been a dilemma next week because I think maybe Liam Knight might be fit to come into the side. So if Tommy's got to miss a week or two, so if Tommy's got to miss a week or two, then maybe Liam will just come and slot into that spot somewhere. And the other thing might be now that people have been saying maybe we'll start Jai Arrow, and the way he played, I'd be tempted to do the same because he brings a lot. First time he come on the field, he made half a break, and he was really good for us. So be interesting to see if Wayne changes the side, and if Thomas isn't there, they're going to have to anyway. So that remains to be seen for Team List Tuesday.
All right. Well, mate, you spent a bit of time at the Bulldogs too. I don't know if you watched any of that match earlier tonight, and they got off to a good start, but losing to Newcastle 32-16 in the end. I quite liked the look of the Doggies in the first half. I saw glimpses of goodness, but the Knights too strong in the end.
Yeah, I had a bit of a look at that. I saw young Kyle Flanagan threw a nice pass out there, so good luck to him moving from the Roosters. But yeah, fond memories of my days at the Dogs. 1991, played with the great Terry Lamb. And even though he was a bit busted back then, his knees were sort of shot and he didn't do much fitness work.
Train, did he? He might do the ball work session on a Thursday.
That's right. Ball work session on a Thursday. Come out and still brain them in the games and setting up tries, backing up tries. And I think I heard the other day he was giving away the Terry Lamb book and you were asking for people to ring up with stories. And I thought, well, I had one story. We were playing the Broncos at Lang Park and we're getting beat by 2 points. There wasn't very long to go, and Bars made a break, and I come off the wing and backed him up, and he drew the fullback, passed me the ball, and I scored under the post, and we won the game. So I always remembered that because I backed up the great Terry Lamb to score a try because he's the backup champion, and
he's the great backer-upper. Yeah.
The end of that is I seen him not long after. I seen him a couple of years ago, and I said, "Bar, remember that time I backed you up and scored that try?" He goes, "Nah, don't remember it."
Yeah, good memories. Hey, good times too back at Belmore. Let's hope they have a good season under Trent Barrett this year. Mate, thanks for joining us and good luck with Rabbitohs Radio, which you can get that podcast. You can find all that stuff on the Rabbitohs website, I'm sure. But thanks very much for joining us, mate, on our Friday night edition of Higher Ground. Thanks for having me, Chris. Yes, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Rabbitohs Podcast Network, and also there's a link on the Rabbitohs website. So, yeah, thanks for having me, mate. Appreciate it. Pleasure. Take care, mate. Okay, mate. See you later.